So we're finally getting around to reassembling this Toyota engine. I had the crank reground 10 under for the rods. The mains are okay. I've got new standard main bearings in there. Deglazed the block. I removed the oil injectors, sprayers, whatever you want to call them, and blew through them. They got a little check valve in each one of them, I noticed. And I'm just cleaning up the main bearing caps and bolts so I can put this back together. We're going to plastic gauge the bearings just to check. They should be good, but just to check them. So I'm just going to check the two ends in the middle main bearing. So put a piece of 1 to 3 thou plastic gauge, that's the green stuff, in there, and we're going to torque the mains down. So there's the front journal, and it's around 2 thou. And the middle journal, it's around 2 thou. And the back one is just a little bit tighter, just a little bit, squeezed a little bit flatter than 2 thou, so it's about 1.9. The spec is maximum 3. Let me check. So here's the specifications. Crankshaft journal clearance. Number 3 is 1.2 to 2.2 thou. Maximum of 3.9 thou. 0.0039 is 3.9 thousandths of an inch. So we're okay. Nominal is 1.2 to 2.2, so we're good. Let's clean the plastic gauge off, and the torque on the bearing caps is 29 foot-pounds plus 90 degrees. So there's the crank installed. Don't forget the thrust bearings on the number 3 journal. 29 foot-pounds plus 90 degrees. So I marked all these with white paint at the 6 o'clock position, and then I turned them to the 9 o'clock position. 90 degrees, quarter turn. So I'm checking the piston ring end gap at the top of the cylinder. It's about 10 thou, and the spec is 8 to 13 for the top ring. There's 12, and it just fits in. No, it's about 12 thou. So we're good to go. So there's the first connecting rod, and you can see that it's squeezed a little bit more than 2 thou. So the spec is 0.9 to 1.9. So it's good to go. So there's the 4 pistons, connecting rods installed. Turns over nice and free. So we're going to put the pistons in the middle here for now. And let's look at reassembling the head. So there's the new cylinder head gasket sitting on the dowels. Make sure the dowels are in the block. There's the reman cylinder head. It's been machined. This surface here is outside the block, so that doesn't matter. And we're ready to set it on there. There's no camshafts in here, so we don't have to worry about the valves contacting the pistons. So there's the head installed with new head bolts. They give you special anti-seize compound. It's this stuff here to put under the washers and on the threads of the bolt. The initial torque is 29 foot-pounds, and then mark them all, as you can see, with a paint dot, and then turn them 90 degrees first pass, and then 90 degrees the second pass. So there's all the head bolts torqued. Like I said, we started out with the dots facing away, and now 90 degrees is a quarter turn, and then another 90 degrees is 180 total. So all of these should be facing towards me now, and they are. Make sure you put these little buckets on the tops of the valve stems, and we're ready to reinstall the camshafts, I believe. 16 new hydraulic lifters installed. new cam gears, new phaser. Okay, so there's the camshafts installed and the bearing caps all torqued down. You start here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And these were on the exhaust side 11 foot-pounds and on the intake side, for some reason, 9 foot-pounds. Okay, so the first thing you got to do is install the balance shaft chain, and it has to be timed. So you can see the keyway on the crank is straight up and down. The exhaust side, no, that's the intake side balance shaft, has a timing mark that lines up with a colored link on the chain. The exhaust side balance shaft has a colored link that lines up with that dot, but then there's another dot that lines up with the gear drive right there. And then last but not least, on the bottom there's two colored links, and there you can see them through the little window line up with the mark on there. Okay, so there's an overview. So colored link dot, colored link dot, two colored links spanning the dot. So I got that chain on. Now it's the timing chain that's being a challenge. And I put the guide and the tensioner in. Lower guide. Yes, the tensioner. Got that in. Timing gear sprocket is on. Okay. So to put the main timing chain on, put the crankshaft sprocket on. Put the left side guide on. Timing marks on the top line up with a mark on the back of the cam. Now I used a pair of vice grips to hold the camshaft from rotating because it has a tendency to want to rotate clockwise. Line up that timing mark. There's colored links on the timing chain that index with there, and on the crankshaft sprocket timing mark. Hold the chain together so that it doesn't fall off when you're putting the guides. Install the main tensioner and install the tensioner slipper. 7 foot-pounds on the bolts. Top chain guide, there's an O-ring underneath it. And then last but not least, well, we're not putting the timing valve cover on yet. Why would they put the valve cover on already? Timing chain cover, okay. Let's have a look on the vehicle. Okay, so we'll start with the gear that drives the balance shaft on the right hand side. You can see it's turned now, but that timing mark lines up with that one. This colored link lines up with that. Over here, this colored link lines up with that. And down here, and the bottom sprocket, there's two colored links right there that line up with between that dot right there. And that's for the balance shaft timing chain. Then the main timing chain, you got this colored link up here. It lines up with a notch right there. This mark, which you can barely see here, lines up with a colored link, and the notch on the cap right here. And then basically you can pull the pin. How come that didn't, oh, that pin's still in there. Okay. So there's a new oil pump kit installed in the timing cover. The timing cover is basically cleaned up, ready to go. This residue in here is not going to hurt anything. You should have seen it before I started. Nevertheless, we're going to put a new timing cover seal in the front. Now there's an O-ring here, here, and here that has to be put in there, and then a bead of RTV around the circumference. So I ran into a bit of a snafu. These are the O-rings that came for the timing cover, and they're not right. You can see the original ones have swollen. This is the one out of this side, it's swollen. And I managed to find some O-rings that should work fine. This one's oil and these two are coolant. Thank God for saving old gasket sets. So we're ready to put the oil pan on. Got the rear seal housing installed. And I got the oil pan cleaned up. Gasket surface is clean. New O-ring in here. And we're ready to put the pan on. I still got to wipe off this surface a bit. Well, there it's ready to go back in the truck. That was a lot of parts and pieces. Took it apart 2 months ago, so giant jigsaw puzzle. Still looking for a couple of brackets, but I'll figure it out when it's going back in the truck. Wow. Have a look at all the pieces I replaced. Rods, main bearings, piston rings, oil pump, cam timing phaser, cam gears, crank gear, lifters, water pump. Well, now we're ready to install it in the truck.